I can't believe I'm even making this video, but a promise made is a video earned, I guess. Does that make any sense? Who cares? What matters is that I have to give a huge shout out to everyone who became a member or gifted memberships and Twitch subscriptions to the channel during my birthday stream a few weeks ago. Because of your generosity, this video now exists, as it was one of our stretch goals that you all smashed very easily. So if you contributed to any way, thank you for your generosity, and screw you for making me play Eliwood in Fire Emblem the Sacred Stones. Please take a moment to like the video to give me the strength necessary to do this, and let's ask the question, can I beat FE8 using only Eliwood? And look, I know Eliwood is not part of the vanilla cast of FE8, so he doesn't really belong in this game, but my hatred for this character is a well-documented affair on this channel at this point. So for today, we're taking a little side quest from the standard FE8 cast to check out how the biggest disappointment in all of Alib will do in Magvel. And I'm sure you've noticed Eliwood not doubling the boss in the prologue with his vanilla base speed, but we'll get back to that soon enough. Don't you worry. First off, let's break down the basic rules of these runs. We start on hard mode. Of course, no cheats and glitches. A single healing item is allowed per map, and I can't use the convoy to grab more healing items. All right, now that this is out of the way, let's look at Eliwood's base stats and growth. So to contextualize this video, since Eliwood isn't an actual unit in FE8, his performance in Sacred Stone is probably a mystery to all of you. So I will spend some time during the video comparing him to Erica and the Erica run specifically, because she is the Lord of Sacred Stones and you start with her normally, so it's just logical. Both are also Sword Lords who start with relatively weak stat lines that make them pretty analogous to one another. And before you start typing your comment, Timmy, I know that actually Lynn would be a closer analog to Erica than Eliwood since they have the same growth. We all know that, Timmy. Please stop being annoying in the comments of my videos. With all your actuallys, this isn't Reddit. Stop being the most obnoxious human on the planet. But yes, Lynn is a closer analog to Eliwood. But Eliwood isn't that far off either. While their growths aren't identical, their roles and what they'll accomplish in the game generally tend to be pretty similar. So how are Eliwood's bases? Well, not fantastic. Eliwood, even in his stat spread, feels very uninspired, I guess is the word, and that may be why he rubs me the wrong way. And I've said this before, but let's take a look at his stat line. 5 strength, 5 skill, 5 defense, 7 speed, 7 luck, 7 con, 0 resistance. Like what are we doing here? It's not that any of these individual stats for a level 1 units are bad. It's just boring, man. It's like we repeated the same numbers because we didn't know what to do with the character. But as seen earlier, it's also not great because even with the rapier, he wouldn't double O'Neil in the prologue. So that kind of matters a little bit for his early game. He's a little bit less good than Erica on that front. But let's take a minute to compare them and look at his other stats, because Eliwood does have some stats that are way better than Erica's. As I just said, Erica does have her warts. 5 con is abysmal. Her strength and defense are a point lower than Eliwood's, but her skill and speed are much better, making this first chapter a little bit less of a coin toss for her generally, because she'll double and at least be more consistent on the dodge. But you know, at least Eliwood just does more damage and can tank a little bit more. So you pick your poison, I guess, at the end of the day. When it comes to growths, Eliwood's growth will resemble his stats. Everything is pretty average, nothing looks out of place, but nothing stands out. Is that good or bad? Well, for a solo run, it's not one or the other. See, in these types of runs, strong growths tend to be favored, as you'll want the maximum potential out of a unit, and Eliwood's max potential is literally a 50-50 coin toss, as it could be great or it could be bad, or he could simply be average. So we'll only know later in the run if the unit excels or not. When comparing him to Erica, he'll actually score some points. Do you remember her run at all? She was a good dodge tank and a good crit machine since we could more heavily rely on those stats, but her damage output was consistently too low. Eliwood has slightly better strength growth, but when it comes to other stats, most of them will have a lower growth than Erica, or equal in terms of defense, with 30% for Eliwood and Erica, which is once again quite good in solo runs, as most units tend to have less than that, and 35% in resistance is also in the vein of good resistance, I would say. Which means that Eliwood will have a few spots where he'll do better, technically, on paper. So overall, I think this is a to be determined on the final form to see how this run is going to go, because there's not much we can tell on paper, because everything is just average. So we'll have to see how this run goes. So here I want to quickly rewind. Eliwood starts with C rank in swords, which is why you've seen me use the steel sword in the early maps of chapter 1 in the prologue. Seth spawns with it, and instead of using the rapier in the prologue and first chapter to save some uses, we'll be using the steel sword. And the reason I do this is quite simple. I still remember how some of the mid-game maps went for Erica, and one of the reasons we had to reset for her was to save up on that special equipment, because those maps were pretty tough for her, and I'm expecting the same to happen to Eliwood. I will not be repeating that mistake once again. So we want to keep as many uses of the rapier as possible, but we'll come back to it later, do not worry. It does slow down Eliwood early to use the steel sword, but he's still easily able to beat the first few mat, albeit he won't consistently double, even when I switch to the iron sword in chapter 2 and forward, which is a little surprising, but his base 7 in speed isn't awesome. So that's kind of normal, I guess, and it's just, you know, the classic disappointment of what Eliwood can be. So I'm not surprised that he is doing this right now. We'll stop on chapter 4 quickly. No, I am not kidding. We are stopping on the first monster map. Yes, it's going to be this kind of video today. First thing I need to do is praise Eliwood here. He did get pretty good strength growth so far, which means he kills zombies in 1 round with the iron sword, which isn't always a guarantee on this map with lower base strength units. So that is one positive for this run already. So that's pretty good. Other than that, well, Eliwood doesn't do great against lances, and a few of the skeletons are carrying them. And he's also not great against the evil eyes, as he hasn't had a single res level up so far. Just watch, really. Words couldn't explain how depressing this scene ahead of me is. So that happened. Okay, he'll succeed the next time at least. That won't happen again. But that is probably the most Eliwood of Eliwood clips of all time. And yes, that was Dussel's death quote. I forgot to change it from the last video. Check it out if you haven't yet. It was a great video. But I do change it after seeing this. Do not worry. You'll see Eliwood's face when he dies going forward. Okay, on to chapter 5, which is pretty important for Eliwood. We'll get our first 2 stat boosters in the Draco Shield and Secret Book. Additionally, we'll also grab the Armor Slayer, another pretty important item for Eliwood, for later in this video. But we pick it up now because it's the spot you can pick it up. We also recruit Joshua, which I've only done in the Erica video so far, I believe. The reason is simple. I want to get the killing edge, as I'm trying to stack the odds in my favor by using as many unique or special weapons for Eliwood, especially for the later stages of the game, before we can just straight up buy a bunch of killing weapons without any problem. Because once again, the Erica video is a pretty good guideline for what to do in the Eliwood run, and I will be following the general same guideline, since the unit can't promote until chapter 16, which is going to be Eliwood's promo chapter, as his promo will be the same as Erica, since his promo is usually late in his own game anyways, and Lord's in this game, FE8, promo in chapter 16, it just felt like the fair point to promo him. So as chapter 6 plays in the background, let's talk about level 20 Eliwood, since he'll hit that threshold then and there. And it's very interesting. First off, let's look at the good. Eliwood is up 1 point on strength, speed, and HP from his averages. That's positive, as those stats will help us perform better in the later stages of the game. The downside is that his other stats are all down comparatively to his averages. Remember, both his skill and defense got a stat booster, so they are technically at 13 and 10 respectively, which is like a point to a point and a half lower than his averages. Same thing goes for his luck, but his most egregious downside is the resistance at only 3 points, when he's usually at like 6 to 7 in that category. So there is some good and bad in this Eliwood, but to me, overall, it seems about average given his growths. This character has no standout growth category, so situations like this tend to happen quite often, where they'll be down a point or two in 1 or 2 categories, and on the opposite, he'll have 1 stat grow a little bit more than normal. So I won't reset, as these stats with upcoming stat boosters seems good enough to me. Additionally, if I reset for this, I'll probably find myself in a similar situation for sure, because, you know, average growths mean kind of like a little bit all over the place, so I'm not expecting anything crazier than this if I reset. So I guess only time will tell if this is good enough. Chapter 6 and 7 will relatively be easy. I'll make a point of killing the Troubadour on chapter 6 to grab that early elixir, as sometimes it can come in handy to have a higher amount of healing on her early maps. But other than that, between both maps, we won't get too much trouble, as Eliwood will be far ahead in his stats compared to the enemy units. The Iron Sword will remain quite strong enough to take care of most enemies, saving us uses of other weapons for later maps. Chapter 8 will be a little bit of a different story. We have to save Ephraim and crew on the left side, and there are plenty of strong lance units to take care of on this map, meaning we'll have to use our rapier a little bit more and armor slayer to take out the knights, just to simply put chances on our side a little bit more. However, after saving the left side unit, Eliwood will have burned through his entire stock of vulneraries. And following that, the room full of armored knight on the top at the right side, the one that contains the angelic robe, will cause some trouble given he is heavily slowed down by the armor slayer. And here the reason I use the armor slayer over the rapier is the rapier has more use cases later on than the armor slayer does. So we're using it now when there's a lot of armor knights that are weaker, since the slowing down will be less than when they have higher speed in the later maps of the game, keeping our rapier for those where we're not going to get slowed down by it. It's just min-maxing a little bit, but it's going to be important, trust me. But all that means that we run into yet another game over. So we'll go back to the drawing board and see what works and what doesn't. So my first adjustment, and I make it pretty quickly, is I pull out the elixir instead of the vulneraries. High 50s to dodge are a little crazy to hope for, and doing it consistently is going to be tough. So getting more healing on my side will be crucial so that I can maximize the amount of hits I can take. I make it to the night room after saving Ephraim with one full elixir left and get a few timely dodges following that. So that's pretty lucky. And I can then grab the angelic robe, boosting my max HP. Something important to note here is that getting to Ephraim's group is also important to dump their inventories into the convoy. Here I'm looking for two specific items: the elixir Ephraim spawns with on chapter 5X and the silver sword that Orson spawns with on chapter 5X. The second elixir is for chapter 9 specifically, as I'm most likely going to need one for that chapter 2, since right after that chapter we can start buying them in the shop. The silver sword will be used in tandem with the iron blade on this chapter, the one you get from the mercenary on chapter 6, basically to kill the 4 thunder mages. I will be baiting them in one at a time, equipping a simple iron sword to increase my dodge chance, and then use whichever of the other 2 weapons to one-hit KO the mage depending on their HP. That way I avoid as much damage as possible and maximize my elixir use for Tyrrell, who I will have to fight from the pillars beside the throne, using the rapier as it has the highest hit chance and dodge chance. We will quickly dispatch of him and move on to the route split and chapter 9 though. Again, this map will be a challenging affair, normally due to the onslaught of enemies. My first attempt will go poorly. I will try to run to Amelia to get the speedwing early, as it could come in handy in the next few chapters. But alas, sword lock units just tend to get easily surrounded, so we'll reset and try an attempt where I wait out the reinforcements from the wood line at the start. That will go much better, as I'll be able to just tank a little bit better and be a little bit less rushed in my actions. Beating this map does allow us to start buying elixirs in the overworld map, as mentioned previously, so we'll load up on those before the next portion of the game, as we'll start using them right away. Chapter 10 won't be too much of a hassle, other than Eliwood not one rounding all units type with the iron sword anymore, which is a tiny problem, as all the other swords slow him down, hence making his void worse and making his performance a little bit tougher. But we'll beat the map and get Tethys' goddess icon to boost our luck, and a lance reaver from one of the mercenary that could prove useful a little ways down the line. So this is usually the part of the video where I say something like, we'll skip through the monster map as they will make quick work of things and things will go well and there won't be any problem because the monster maps are easy. Guess what, y'all? We're not skipping the monster maps today. We're going through them. As Eliwood starts off by getting dangerously close to a game over early on chapter 11. There is a bad combo of strong lance yielders on both maps and very accurate evil doggos too. So we'll spend a little bit of time holed up on the pillar near the skill book chest because we also want that skill book, and we'll pick it up. Once that is done, we still have the bottom Death Goyle and crew to worry about. So instead of rushing the door and letting them open and then letting them rush through like we usually do, we'll change it up a little bit. I'll take the side corridor and bait them in one at a time to minimize the damage. And I'll also use the Lance Reaver to give a little bit of a chance against them, because that Dev Grill can be scary. Once that scary encounter is done though, we head to the left side to kill the boss skeleton and any stragglers and beat this map. Mission accomplished, right? Well, not quite. This one was doable, but despite the challenge, the biggest problem is Chapter 12, which has the same problem as we've said before. They just come in a worse format, as the gargoyles can't always be fought from a favorable position on this map, and also in certain instances, they utilize range on this map much better than on the previous map. Oh, and also Evil Eyes. They are scary given Eliwood can't enemy phase them due to no range weapons, and you know, remember that my dog has like 3 resistance, so fun times. Just fun times ahead, man. Just very fun times. And we do run into another game over, as we simply take too much damage early from not having a lot of opportunities to fight from a forest tile. So in the next attempt, we'll calm down the rushing and we'll just install ourselves on the backwood to wait out the first line of enemies. You'll see that there's a lot of sit on advantageous style and wait it out happening here, since we'll be in a more advantageous position while clearing out the couple of Evil Eyes who will still be scary nonetheless. Once that's done, we'll travel slowly through the stationary enemies using our Lance Reaver to help us dodge and kill some of the gargoyles before we cross the reinforcement threshold. Then we'll position ourselves on the higher up forest and take care of the first round of reinforcement. It'll be a slow fight, but on the forest tile, our dodge is pretty good, generally speaking, and only the ranged ones are left. What is left of our Lance Reaver will do the job. After all is said and done, we'll have 1 elixir use left for the last section of the map, which should be the easiest, as there is a gate where the boss is that can protect us and heal us at the same time. So from there on out, I'll clear the rest of the map, but the challenge of the map is really those gargoyles, just surviving them. But we'll get the important energy ring from Ewan, boosting Eliwood's strength just a little bit more. As you can probably start seeing, the struggle of late promotion unit is starting to show for Eliwood, much like it did for Erica back in the first one of these runs. By the way, I've just thought about this. I've been doing these videos for a little over 2 years and a half now, so just thank you for all the support. You guys have allowed me to make this channel my career, and I'm forever grateful for that. And if you want to keep allowing me to pursue this dream, please leave a like on the video if you enjoy them. It really does help keep the channel relevant in the eyes of the ever fickle YouTube algorithm. So thank you so much for all the support, and thank you for helping keep the channel alive. I am forever grateful to you all for this. Thank you. Anyways, enough sappy stuff aside, Chapter 13 looms ahead, and it won't be that complicated overall. The big thing will be to manage to get Amelia's Speedwing, so talking to her before she attacks us. But aside from that, we'll pick a castle and pray. You know, Frederick once said pick a god and pray. Well, Eliwood is picking a castle and praying and waiting out just the enemies simply. He doesn't have the stat to push through the enemies and kill the boss to end the map early, so he'll pick that castle and he'll pray good. He'll pray good, which you'll need, because Pablo's long range spell a little scary here at times. Enough jokes. On to Chapter 14, where we'll get our second energy ring, and Eliwood's low resistance will be a problem with that, since the energy ring will be in a room full of magic. Yay, and it'll be a slight pain in our bums, and that is not counting the cav reinforcements that will have plenty of time to spawn behind us and cause quite the commotion. So how do we handle this fun little party? Well, we have to use the environment slightly to our advantage, but also we gotta get lucky. First off, after a few attempts at simply rushing, I'll change things up, placing Eliwood in the back to stop 2 of the calves from spawning, since for some reason, if you stand in that corner, only 1 of the 3 calves spawns, meaning that Eliwood has to face less enemies. It does put a couple of odds on our side, and additionally, fighting from the sand tiles gives us +5 avoid. Next up, once all that is done, we head to the mage room. Unfortunately, we have to use up more of our rapier, but we were keeping it for instances like this. The reason we have to use it now is because the knight that is in front of the door has to die right away, or else we have to eat a lot of long range attack. We can't counter attack. However, if the knight does go down, the mages are all forced to go into melee range of Eliwood to get killed by Eliwood. We still need a little bit of dodge luck on our side, and then we have to kill 1 more after that. But it does help us out a lot to use the rapier in this specific instance. Next up, we go through the right side room. See, on this map, there is 3 different paths you can go through, but the right side one tends to be the safest, because there's the least amount of threats going through there. Any other side forces you to go through a certain threshold that spawns shaman reinforcements and forces us to fight a lot more range unit, which Eliwood does not like. So we have to face the right side room. There is one problem in the right side room. There is a Sword Reaver, Axeman. That can be a little scary. But other than that, we can safely clear down that path until we get to the throne room. We'll use the pillars behind the door to take out the knights and archers alike, which will help us out. Even the reinforcement that start walking once you've past the midway point of the room. But again, high hit chance nonetheless. high damage. We have to get somewhat lucky. This time around, we do. Once again, it's all about using those pillars to our advantage as much as possible. We'll even get really lucky dodging the sniper after we miss him, because he could have done a lot of damage to us. So we got to thank our lucky stars there. But with all that being said, we get to make it to Carlisle with 1 elixir, so that's pretty good. However, you'll see that our hit rate is horrible generally. So here we'll play a game of crit chicken using the killing edge. Who will get a crit first between me and Carlisle, pretty much, since I'm trying to conserve rapier uses for Orson on chapter 16. So 8 crit versus 29. We'll both miss our first and second attack. And here I'll enemy phase again because it's going to be a turn. He's going to attack me. He's going to hit me. I will hit him. No crits, though. We have 1 more elixir use left. We'll use it. And then he'll heal up the throne, attack us, hit us again. We miss. Here I decide to switch to the rapier to put more chances on my side. Less crit, but more hit because I am a little scared. I enemy phase him again, hoping for a crit. He hits me again. He dodges again. We have 5 HP left. Is it going to go our way? Unfortunately, it doesn't. We get hit. And we catch a game over. Yeah, Carlisle will be a big coin toss, so we'll catch another game over and then flounder on this map a little longer as RNG really just needs to somewhat fall in our lap. I'll skip ahead to the next time we get to Carlisle, as you've seen pretty much all the bad things that could happen leading up to that. I'll use my elixir before fighting Carlisle, so it's not looking great here. I have no more elixirs, and we're ready to fight him. All right, I will walk up to him, and you see me pull out the rapier here at first, and check the other one, see the hit rate, but it's still the same, 40% hit rate. It's not great, so we go for the rapier here, and we get a crit, dropping him down to 1 HP. We get extremely lucky, and we dodge twice in a row, and crit him. So here I decided it was safer to just use the more accurate item, as you know, less crit chance, but a couple less uses. It won't be that bad as long as I have some left for Orson. It's just, you know, at this point I didn't want to redo the map all over again. I was getting a little tired, so just clearing that out here a little bit more consistently felt like the best play overall. Okay, so chapter 15 is going to be a lot, and not from a standpoint of actual difficulty, but just like time. Since Eliwood can easily survive dipping on and off the forts and healing that way, the main issue is Dussel's survival to keep Ephraim alive, and it takes a while for Eliwood to go help them out, even if I skip out on getting the items, since I want to grab the boots, the metastone, the body ring, and the worm slayer, especially to be able to beat up Walter pretty easily. But speaking of beating up, let's say bye-bye Null to Null as he gets himself beat up. Yeah. Bye-bye, Null. Bye-bye. And Null getting beat up will happen a lot, as we'll have to reset a couple of times. So I'll have to adjust my strategy a little bit on this map once again. As usually, putting Dussel in the village is usually enough, as it kind of gives me a time challenge that pushes me to rush a little bit more and turtle a little bit less. However, there is technically the possibility to place him on a fort, which makes him pretty much impossible to kill. This strategy is the one I've only ever used in the Erica run, and a few people in the comments of that video found it a little cheap and too easy, so I stopped using it in favor of the village strategy. But for this run, I'll make an exception to make my life slightly easier and make this run that is getting close to unbearable a little bit more bearable. So here you'll see me keep the middle of the map for the first few rounds of reinforcement, trying to use my healing items as little as possible. I'll also pull out the silver sword as I try to one round the wyverns, as they have healing AI, meaning that if their health gets low, they'll simply run away, find a way to heal, and come back with a vengeance to kick my bum. Then, as usual, Dussel is entertaining the entire Grado army. I'll take the time to grab the previously mentioned items, as I have time to do it now. And the boots and body ring will make this whole thing slightly easier, as movement allows us some flexibility, and constitution makes the heavier weapon affect Eliwood's ability to dodge a little bit less. It doesn't make it 0, but it makes it a little bit better. All right, I'll skip slightly ahead, since a lot of this is baiting enemies away from Dussel's little party to isolate them and then kill them one by one, and that's not really interesting or even hard for that matter. It was just extremely annoying to do. Eliwood will even get hit by a sleep at some point, which I don't think has ever happened on this map. I guess there's a first time for everything, and very apropos that it's happening to Eliwood and not any other character. We'll be using the forts to heal up, of course, saving as many usage of the elixir as we can. Okay, so how does the Calic fight go? Well, we go in with 1 use of elixir left, and we get hit by a 42% chance to hit and miss our own 70. So not a great start. We'll back up and heal for a minute and come back. attack, I think. We'll work on enemy facing Calic with the Iron Sword, as it is the only way to double him and keep good enough dodge in the meantime. We dodge and hit him on the first round, but on the second round of combat, he does hit us, unfortunately. Here I got a choice to make. Either I go back to the fort, heal all the way up, and come back, but that will mean he's also healed all the way back up, as he is standing on a fort himself. We can't rely on critting him since he has the Hoplin guard, but we'll still pull out the killing edge, as it allows us to have more damage on our side without being slowed down, as the body ring grants us a total of 9 con, exactly the weight of the killing edge. However, it is still a little unfortunate that we have weapon triangle advantage, but somehow still find ourselves at a disadvantageous position most of the time. It's weird. I'll end up healing with my last elixir, as I can't really hope for much better as of now, so I'm not going to go back and heal. I'm just going to fight him straight up. I have to beat him, and hoping to dodge this much feels like stretching my luck overall, so I'd rather just kill him right out, and the killing edge does the job. Our next challenge will be Vaulter, as we can kill enemies around him with ease using the forts that are around him. Luckily enough, I picked up the Worm Slayer, and I still have a few usage of my Lance Reaver, so can easily dispatch of him. After weakening him with the Lance Reaver, I finished him off with the Worm Slayer, as it was a little too inaccurate for my taste to do the whole thing by itself. I do feel compelled to mention that after beating this map, our usage of both the Lance Reaver and Reappears are quite low, and they are our main weapons for taking out Orson on the next map. So keeping their usage to at least a few use per weapon was an intentional decision, which is why I did mention them a couple of times in the video where they were crucial weapons to use. But for the next map, its usage will be reserved for Orson, as he'll be our toughest challenge to date. We could have technically kept a little bit more usage for the next map for some of the enemies, but we kind of really needed those weapons to consistently get here. Alright, chapter 16. Before we even get to talk about the general strategy, I have to mention that I have 3 hours of footage at 3 times speed dedicated to this map alone. I had to reset over and over and over again. And there's a few reasons why, and it all begins at the start of the map. Eliwood for this point in the game doesn't have fantastic speed. Who can blame him? He's stuck in his pre-promoted Lord state. He can't get more levels. But right from the get-go, we will get hit usually by a few mercenaries at the start, as their hit rate is pretty high. And we'll also have a hard time dodging the 2 mages, who have pretty good hit rate, but also pretty good damage, generally speaking. Following that, you have to kill at least one of the 2 knights to get through him. And we've gone over Eliwood's woes versus lance units already, so that's not a strong start. Next up, forget about rushing the throne. There's no way he makes it to the first pillars. Therefore, we have to use the Erica run strategy we haven't used in a while, which entails standing on the bottom pillar, giving us more defense and avoid. But that won't necessarily be a walk in the park either, as the Swordmaster has a high hit rate and a large HP pool, and 2 shamans have Flux instead of Luna, which gives them a much better hit rate even on the pillar. 3 resistance here isn't awesome, and it's annoying. It's annoying us a little bit more than I'd like. And I'd like to tell you this is the extent of our woes, but no, this is only the beginning. Since after we easily handle the warriors, because those are not too bad, we have a good weapon triangle matchup, they have pretty terrible hit rate, we have to handle cavaliers, knights, and great knights, who all have a relatively good matchup against Eliwood for the most part, but we'll need even more luck to survive. On top of that, the thief that steals the talisman has a pretty good chance to be able to just run away if you don't quickly kill the group of great knights. On this specific attempt you're watching right now, I was lucky enough and managed to get to him. Then I immediately get unlucky and miss my attack, meaning I lose a talisman. Anyways, that can happen. Okay, so let's assume everything goes as good as it can here. We have 1 elixir left, and the throne room is still left to handle, with 2 long-range sages and 3 pretty decent heroes and 3 more knights. How will that go for Eliwood? Well, we have to get in range of at least 2 attacks without any environmental protections. The long range sage will get each a turn to attack us without being on a pillar, since we don't have the movement to get the pillars quickly enough without getting attacked. And you may have noticed a very important issue here. The Perch Tome is hitting slightly above 50%. Some of you may know why the above 50% marker is significant. For those who don't, I'll touch on this in a few minutes. Keep that in mind, it'll be important. The second sage is bolting and is much less of a threat, but still can do a lot of damage. We luckily dodge both attacks before getting to the pillar. We can easily drain the bolting tome sage from the pillar, since it'll give us better avoid. Once that is done, however, we have to bait in the enemies around Orson while taking care of the purge sage, which means being in an exposed position, hence my usage of iron swords to avoid getting slowed down. However, we'll run into another problem. Double healers with physics. We'll heal back up any chip damage I manage to do, dragging out the fights more than I'd like. Because of the iron sword usage that I have to do to not get slowed down, the enemies aren't dying in 1 round, which means they're getting healed, which means they get more rounds of combat. which ends up forcing my hands on the final elixir. While fighting the knight, I get hit by a purge. I dodge all the other ones though. By the end of the day, I simply can't dodge the very accurate silver sword and lances that follow up, where the weapon triangle disadvantage will truly shine here. And Eliwood's poor speed will also really shine here. All right, so we got pretty close, but simply not close enough. How can we help our RNG exactly? Well, there isn't a ton we can do on this map, but there are one or two things. First off, for the first round of battle, before most of the reinforcements show up and all the enemies start running at you, we do have time, since the reinforcements only spawn once we cross a certain threshold on the map. The first round of combats will back up and engage the mages and mercenaries with their hit rate significantly hampered, since we'll be standing on a forest tile. This drops the chances of us getting damaged before reaching the pillar, saving us some hit points. And here, these forest tile will drop some of these hit rates below 50. And while we move forward, let's start looking at why this is significant, as more attempts play in the background. And it's not only because lower percent equals better, that is certainly part of it, but it isn't the whole story. See, most of modern FE games function under a system called true hit, or more commonly known as 2RN. This system was basically designed to lie to the player and make the gameplay experience feel smoother. But what it means essentially, as you can see the graph on the screen right now, is that hit rates above 50% are actually a little higher than what is shown on screen, while hit rates below 50% are actually skewed to be below what is shown to the player. This essentially acts as a way to favor the player, as in most playthroughs, you'll find your hit rates to generally be over 50, while the enemies will tend to have lower chances of hitting. So all that being said, sometimes having those extra points to fall below that line is quite useful to put the odds slightly more in your favor. Now that this is out of the way, we'll also talk about the next tiny adjustment, which won't have much of an impact, but will be helpful down the line. Instead of rushing in at the bottom right away to trigger the reinforcements, we'll wait for the thief to be done with his rounds of stealing, and he'll head right to us that we can kill him and grab the talisman from him. There's actually a small chance that his speed is equal to ours and that he steals from us, but that only happened once for me, so we're generally fine. This change won't be major, but it'll help us have a little bit more resistance. So we'll try to do that, put chances on our side, because paired with pure water for the long range sages specifically, it can help a little bit. All right, now that this is out of the way, let me show you my pain on this map through my favorite narrative technique in these videos, and that is with the help of a silly little video montage of all my game overs. So of all this, is this even possible? Well, on paper, yes. But in practice, it isn't this simple. We need so much RNG to go our way. But there is one final thing I can technically do. And no, it's not resetting. As I mentioned earlier, our stats probably wouldn't be much different, or we'd have different problems, so I don't want to deal with those. And also, with all the stat boosters, take a look. Those stats aren't awful. You know, they're pretty good. So what will I do? Well, there is technically a rule that hasn't been used in any of these runs since the Erica run, because no run has been hard enough to bring it back. Usually the reset will be a better strategy than doing that rule, because I don't like using that rule, but sometimes you gotta do it. Well, I guess it was used in a run recently, because Bad at Fire Emblem made a solo run of FE8 with Hector, and he used that rule in this exact same chapter. And that is the mulligan rule with healing items, where for a single map in the game, I get myself a redo on healing items, and I can get an extra one for a single map if the map proves to be near impossible. Again, I tend to not like using it, but in a situation where the character can't promote until late, I think it's somewhat fair to give them a chance to finish the run without me having to pull my hair out and just hope for RNG, because this is not a situation where it's like impossible. This is a situation where I just need like odds that rival winning the lottery. And I love making these videos, but if I would know I could get these odds, I would just rather win the lottery. A lot of money, guys. Either way, I digress. We'll use it for this one map specifically. And you'll see that it doesn't guarantee a win, since I'll get a couple more game overs after enacting the rule, because timing your usage of elixir to maximize it is quite important. And there is always a chance of not dodging the long range magic, but it's not a given, and Eliwood still struggles for a while. And Orson does take us out in our first time reaching him. So it's still very complicated. Okay, so we'll make another adjustment before we get to Orson, and that is to fight the couple of heroes and knights where I'll take the killing edge instead to try to kill them out faster with the crits to have to go through less rounds of combat because of the priest that heal. But with that adjustment, we finally make it to Orson with a single elixir left. Let's see how it goes. All right, we won't heal before him because we can technically tank one of his hits. So we'll go for the enemy phase. We will take out the rapier and the lance reaver, which both have 3 usage. So we'll attack with the lance reaver, hoping to dodge the 23% chance to dodge. It would have been wiser to just wait enemy phase with the rapier and just wait. We'll go on the lance reaver with 80% chance to hit. He dodges us, but we do dodge at 23%. He will switch to his silver sword, 20 damage to us. We're down to 8 HP. We will be healing here, but before I heal, I switch to the rapier, knowing he's probably going to switch to the lance, his spear again, and I'll be able to use my lance reaver after that. So, you know, here I get a higher crit chance, and I hit him with 19. He does hit us, 21 HP left. We switch to the lance reaver, which will do 12 damage if it hits. So we go for the hit, and we get a crit. This would have been extremely close, by the way, if he had switched again. He would have been maybe like 1 HP, so it would have been a pretty interesting call. But we do beat Orson with a crit. Some little bit of luck on our side, but you know, these runs sometimes require a little bit of a luck, that's for sure. Now we can finally promo into the Knight Lord class, which is pretty much a glorified Cavalier, but it's still better. Still better than what we've been running with right now. And you'll see that I switched out Erica Sigland, I think that's how you pronounce it, with Eliwood's Durandal. It just felt right for him to have his own special weapon that slows him down so much. It's barely any good, but it's his own. It's his. So yes, I did switch out the weapon because I just thought it would be a little bit more thematic. All right, so will the run become easy all of a sudden? No. The next maps won't be tough per se, but it'll be long. We'll mostly stand on a hill for chapter 17 and farm experience. You'll see that early on, we'll use the rest of the steel and iron blade to assure us S rank in swords. Since yes, we do have Durandal, which is a PRF weapon, so Eliwood can use it no matter what. But technically, it doesn't have monster super effectiveness. So I did not give it any monster super effectiveness. It does do good against dragons, but since there are no monsters in FE7, doesn't get that extra perk in my opinion. However, Eliwood can still use a Dalma, which is a pretty good weapon. It'll give him more resistance, so pair that up with the extra strength that Durandal can give. He might end up having a pretty versatile late game switching between both weapons. I just thought it was fair since there's another option for him in a Dalma. You may disagree with that, but you know, just felt right. Once I get my S rank, I'll switch to mostly using Javelin since Eliwood does get lances on promotion, and that'll speed up the map quite a bit. But it's a question of standing on that hill, killing them all with a Javelin, hoping to dodge as much as possible because your dodge is still quite low, but it's not a tough map nonetheless. And then Leon, you kill him and you end the map. Leon number 1, dead, map ended. And having access to javelins will be very useful to chapter 18. It will allow Eliwood to range the 2 Gorgons that are out of melee range, but that won't stop us from the usual chapter 18 shenanigans. Since Eliwood is still leveling up on this map, we'll use as many eggs as possible to boost our levels, because the eggs provide 50 experience point no matter what, which can be a good tool for farming. But because his level is a little lower than usual units at this point in the game, he'll still run into similar issues of high 30s hit rate with decent Gorgon damage to follow, and he'll struggle to finish the map quickly. But that is not unbelievable. That's like most units in the game. It'll take a couple of tries, but the strategy will remain standard. The goal is to bring as many Gorgons on the fire tiles as possible for them to die to the trap damage. The other thing that we'll do is when the Gorgon waltz near us, we'll switch to a Dalma, getting both higher resistance, but also forcing them to switch to their damaging ability. As for some reason, they only favor stone if they are forced to attack at 3 range, or if they are in danger of being counterattacked. And that's pretty much how we'll handle the map. We'll take a few tries as previously mentioned, but nothing egregious as we've seen in previous videos. So we'll move on to chapter 19, and again, a pretty simple map. We won't be able to make it to Reeve quickly to finish the map since Eliwood's strength with Javelin is quite pitiful, so you won't be able to push through the higher HP and defense units. But this isn't a problem. We can keep up the training by simply picking up Mansell sitting on the throne. It takes a little longer, but Eliwood gets valuable levels by fighting here, and also gets a Brave Sword and a Brave Lance to boot. So it's a relatively safe and consistent strategy. It's just a little longer. Now that that is all done, we are inching very close to the end here, and we head towards chapter 20. And as this long tedium of a map plays in the background, since I'll be honest, Eliwood barely struggles here, but that's kind of most units. We'll talk about his level 20 since he'll hit it quite late. From a technical standpoint, this Eliwood isn't awesome. He got 2 energy rings, meaning technically he was on 21 strength, so 3 under the average. Same exact thing for skill. Speed is maxed out at 24, which is nice, and his defense is technically 1 point lower, while his HP is 1 point higher than his average, considering stat boosters, that is. His luck is right on the average, though, so that's nice. But I do need to give this man's huge props, because that resistance being at 18 is one hell of a comeback story, considering it was at 20 levels ago. Consider you get 5 free points from his promo and the 1 talisman. It's still 10 points on a 35% growth. Kind of impressive. But his other stats, while being technically under the average, aren't awful overall. It's still kind of okay, as they are almost at his caps, so it's looking fine to me. But I guess he could have been capped on 2 more stats, which would have been even more awesome, but he has to disappoint us a little bit. It's still Eliwood after all. Let's see how he does against Morva, and with Durandal giving the extra strength and super effective damage against dragons, he'll take out Morva quite easily. It would have felt wrong if I didn't use the weapon at least once in the run, but we move on to the final map, where we'll see if a solo Eliwood can beat this game fully on its own. The final chapter will have the expected roadblocks. Once we kill the early skeletons, we'll have to phase the zombie dragon, where Durandal will be quite effective once again, but not quite enough to 1 round, and we'll game over. Okay, so this is a classic situation with this enemy where we simply need luck of the draw and get a crit or dodge to pass through him. And as much as I want to pin this on Eliwood, I can't. This is just the classic FE8 solo running happening here. You see that here I try a somewhat more consistent strategy of baiting in with the spear, dropping his HP a little so Durandal can 1 round him right after. However, we don't dodge, which forces us to take at least 1 elixir and most likely a second one before Leo. But I'll try to stretch out that second one's use as far as humanly possible, since every bit of HP in these runs is a valuable resource. Our second challenge, as usual, will be the Gorgons, who Eliwood will do relatively well against. Their hit rate will remain low, and with pure water, their damage manageable. This is such a come up from chapter 16, it's crazy. I'll take a small risk here and heal in range of the shadow shot, one managing to luckily dodge or attack before heading out to clear the others, with hopefully not taking any damage before Leo. The evil doggos will have a different plan though, but luckily I double one of them and dodge the others, so I only take a total of 9 points of damage before having to fight Leon. So how will that go? Before fighting him, I'll take out a variety of weapons. Both Adalma and Durandal will be taken out for their damage, and one for the extra resistance, the other one for the higher strength just in case. And the Brave Sword, as multiple hits can sometimes put a little bit more extra RNG on your side, as more hits equals more chance of proccing a crit. However, you'll see here that the only good option is Adalma, as Eliwood can survive 2 hits if he uses pure water with Adalma. So that's the lane will go down, see 25 damage, which means 2 full rounds of combat before I even have to heal. That's awesome. That's kind of like the most wanted scenario for Leo. But we end up doing enough damage that we don't even need to heal. We can keep our final elixir for the Demon King. So the Demon King, as you'll see, will require Adalma since Durandal is far too heavy, making our dodge lower and stopping us from doubling with less damage since there is no super effective damage to it. We'll hit the Demon King and won't dodge him, but I'll back up and take out his reinforcements, who shouldn't be too hard. Here, unfortunately, reinforcements break off from the main group and head towards Ephraim. Try to get Eliwood to go help, but alas, no luck. Ephraim gets crit by a killing edge. That one ticked me off a little, as that was kind of out of my control, and the Demon King was almost in the bag beyond this. So we'll have to start over. Do we make it back to the Demon King? Well, yes. But let me show you what happens in the next attempt, as it is a quite common issue for these runs when going in with 1 elixir, but with lowish defense like Eliwood has currently. We can attack him and get his HP down to kill range, but if we don't dodge on the enemy phase or our own attack phase, he can essentially kill us, as he does more than 30 damage, hence we can't tank 2 hits. We get a couple more points of defense, the game over would be avoidable. Alas, that is not the case here, which means that we need to dodge at 1 point. So luck again needs to factor in on our side. I end up spending about an hour at 3 times speed on this map, so it's not far from being easy, but it wasn't a total disaster. On this next attempt, we managed a coveted crit on the zombie dragon with Durandal, which is pretty good start since we managed to only use a single elixir before facing our buddy Leon, who the strategy to fight will be the exact same as previously seen. Just survive on 1 HP with pure water and head into the Demon King fight with 2 elixir. Alright, so we move Ephraim out of the way, hoping that he doesn't become a problem later on. Again, we checked Durandal, but there's no point. Adalma it is, 25 damage a pop, 94% chance to hit. He has 60% chance to hit us. We will dodge actually the 32. That's huge. I think technically that means is that in the back? No, I think we still have to dodge, but we'll see. We'll back up. There's a few scary enemies, but not that many, honestly, as long as we take out this Gorgon. Remember, we still have 2 elixirs, and honestly, we'll clear them pretty easily, so I will take some time to skip ahead because we don't really need to care about dodging them. Ephraim has a lot of healing items, so if he does get hit by that shadow shot, I can simply just heal it up with one of his elixirs that I put on him to not be an issue, not to be a problem, and the rest will be pretty academic to kill. It's going to be a matter of taking them out one by one and just slowly doing that. And you'll see that after fighting the monster units, we have 48 HP left. Here, what I'll do is instead of risking it, I'll use one of my elixirs right away, full up HP, just to be safe. It doesn't really matter because at the end of the day, you can tank one of his hits and we have to dodge something. That's kind of like the play here. So healing doesn't really matter, but you know, better be safe than sorry, I guess. So we run up with a Dhalma. 25. We've already dodged him once. That's pretty good, but it might not be. We get hit here. We hit him twice. Hitting is not a problem. Okay, now we have 28 HP. The enemy phase, we need to dodge his 60% attack here. And do we do? We do. Oh my god, Eliwood dodged 260% on the Demon King, and you can see here I am not moving. I'm celebrating. I'm running around my room because this run took way longer than I wanted to record. Therefore, I was in my office just fist pump in the air, and we attack the Demon King. We finish him off, and we say bye-bye, Demon King, and bye-bye, Eliwood. I don't have to do this anymore. I'm done. Golly, okay. This run was something, chat. Took me a while to beat through, and I'm so happy to be done with this. I still hate Eliwood like a lot, and making this video, especially chapter 16, made me dislike him even more. And yes, I know that I owe Eliwood an apology video since I promised it during my latest FE7 Iron Man, where he did pretty good, but this video is not the apology video. So allow me to shit on him a little longer. I will be making that video though. I promise. I made a promise. So Eliwood unsurprisingly had a terrible run in all metrics. It was actually pretty similar to Erica's overall. And I think all lords who go through this challenge will end up with a pretty similar time and turns. And here's Eliwood's performance. 13 hours and 19 minutes and 759 turns. Some of the worst we've seen, but still technically better than Erica. So I will slot him in just above her. And I know he's not a character from Sacred Stones, but it's fun to add him to the tier list nonetheless. He is going to be at the top of the Lord tier for now. I sure hope Ephraim has a better time overall than him, because I'd be so sad if he doesn't and I have to place him below him. I would cry, I think. Either way, that's about it for this video. Thank you all for watching. Please leave a like on the video, and a huge shout out to all my members and Twitch subscribers who help keep the channel running. Hit the join button below if you want to join them. In the meantime, let me give a special shout out to my tier 2 and 3 members. Those being Brawler456, Forgotten Fox, Hirame, Case, Iron Wolf, No, Storm Eagle CH, Rogue Arcadia, Stylish, A Grumpy Bear, Reploid Zero, and Goatnik. Thank you all for the extra support. This will be all for today's video though. Thank God I'm done with Eliwood, and I hope you all have a good time, a good day, and I hope I can see you all in the next video or in one of the live streams. See you guys all then. Bye-bye.